Welcome to the Hux Legacy Show with Randy Hux, sharing inspiring stories of success from all walks of life.
Hey, welcome to the Hux Legacy Podcast. It's good having you guys here today. I have somebody really super special today. A gentleman's name with us today is Tom Haines. And Tom Haines is a fabulously smart mathematician, a business person, and he works with Annexus group, which is a very special group of people in our world of money and finance. But I think more importantly, what you're going to find from Tom is that he's a fabulous man. Just walk us through a little bit about your past, like where you grew up, the things that were most impactful to you as a kid, how your mom and dad left their legacy. What was their legacy? If they're with us, or even if they're not with us, what is the legacy that they have left at this point in their life? And what is your plan in the future for your family?
Wow. Well, Randy, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it. We appreciate your belief and support with us and having me join you with your clients today. So I'm actually from the Philadelphia area, and so I'm not far away where I am today. I live in New Jersey, North Jersey, but outside the New York City area. So two different sporting meccas, but I'm a Philadelphia native, and I actually had the opportunity to when I was in high school, talk about being in the right place, the right time. Across the street from my high school was the largest index trading firm in the world in the time.
Right.
This is in the late 90s. And I was able to walk across the street. I was a good student. I have different talents, I would say this or that, but I was able to walk across the street and open my eyes to the world of quantitative finance. So really blessed to have that, and that changed my life. And I can talk to you a little bit over our call today, how we transitioned from going into index proprietary trading, really trying to serve clients. Then my parents. I think when I look at my mother and father, my father passed 6 years ago. My mother's still around. She is a policy holder of some of our products. A lot of times people ask that. Yeah. As she's 78, she's actually using RMDs with rollovers. She lives modestly. She grew up with parents that grew up in the Depression, so she really tries to be responsible and have a savings mindset. And then my father was actually an environmental attorney for Sunoco, and he always valued, I think, what I valued about my father was hard work. He went to law school at night. He didn't have his father died very young, so he worked very hard to put himself through law school, support our family, very fair. When you think about an environmental attorney for an oil company, a lot of times you think, oh, that's the big corporate attorney that hurts people. And I remember my dad, the two things I would remember my dad for was the ability to walk into a mall and see union leaders coming up to him, saying hi. And he was on the other side of the negotiating table, and they respected my dad. And the other side of it is my dad always instilled in me that even if the government is challenging you with ethics and honesty, you go in there and you make your case. And those are the two things. Both of them taught me about being modest. They taught about being honest in the way you serve it and being there for your family and community.
Yeah, you bring up a really big point here. I written down a note here. I actually read this, and I was going to ask you, but you beat me to it a little bit when you talk about humility. And so share with me a little bit, like it sounds like your dad and mom have both taught you a lot about humility, because we're talking to a person here that creates indexes for you, the general public, to invest your hard-earned dollars in. Like, this is not the average person out there in terms of, just, a 8-to-5 job. This guy is an engineer of sorts, a mathematical engineer. So, in our industry gets a lot of grief about the lack of integrity that it has, but I've only associated myself in our firm and just personally with people that are high integrity, high character people. And I refuse to do otherwise. And so, because it's those people, the ones that you surround yourself with are the ones that are going to take you to where you want to go. It's never you that do it on your own, but then it's that saying that I've heard before. There's two types of people in this world. And it comes down to really, it's that simple. Those two types of people are, one, you're either a humble person or you're about to be humbled. And so I've been humbled, and I know that, being humble is a huge element of source of difficulty for some. I mean, you look at some of our government officials right now, like, where's the humility? You're supposed to be a servant. No, we're all supposed to be on this earth to serve others. So, tell me a little bit about your thoughts and how you saw your parents, demonstrate that humility. And if you have any specific examples, that's great. And how you try to do that for your own family right now, Tom, I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, my parents never were overspenders. They were always extremely conservative the way they spend. As I said, we were the last actually to get cable on the block. Here, my mother's mother was the one to say, get them cable. Tom's going into high school. He should get a computer, or typewriter's not going to be good enough. So they've always took that stance. And which was helpful because I'm an only child. So a lot of people say, "Oh, really? You're the only child." Yeah. Okay. So all of a sudden, when my wife, after a while, started to see that I'm an only child, but I'm not an only child in terms of being spoiled, right? And I always had their attention, and I always allowed me. And one of the things being an only child was being, around adult conversations, right? More serious conversations. And besides my parents, I learned from my aunt. My aunt was a Roman Catholic sister. She oversaw 15 high schools in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And here's a perfect example. She was a PhD and a national debate champion, very, very talented, a negotiator actually as well, and an educator. And she could have had, a tremendous job. And she had the humility from a materialism perspective, and a service to people. She had a lot of confidence in what she did and charisma. And I think what I saw about her, even as she got sick very early versus she was 65 when she passed, but the charisma and passion she had to continue her ministry, I feel like you have to have your talent. And if you have a talent, you got to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what my parents, I think, were supportive, allowing me to get into the field of finance. They weren't. That my dad, as I said, was an environmental attorney, but my passion has been in financial economics. I always loved history like himself, but I love finance, and be able to run with that. Finance to me is a hobby. When people say to my wife, "Well, Tom works a lot," she'll joke, "It's a hobby. You got to stay physically healthy, be there for your family," but it is a hobby of mine. And I think where you were going about serve, it does remind me of a story. And I don't want to sound holier than thou. Having a good moral compass doesn't mean that it solidifies your crystal ball of markets, okay? Sure. Just because I build strategies doesn't mean, okay. But what I do understand is that we're not going to try to create things just for false deception and misconception. We're trying to have our best front forward in hopes of serving the American retiree. But I was actually in Paris for 3 years. I was trading the European markets out of college, and had the fortune at the time, I was the largest trader in Germany. So 24 years old, I just turned down a promotion in Japan to continue staying in Europe. And I went to a Catholic-speaking English church, so not a French church. I failed out of Berlitz, which is a pay-as-you-go language school. The languages aren't my thing per se. And I remember the priest pointing to a NASA astronaut. Obviously, a lot of talk about NASA this week because here we are in March of 2025, and the astronauts are coming back. They were stranded up there, and here Elon Musk is bringing them back this week. But he pointed to a NASA astronaut in the congregation who was on a mission with the EU, not a space mission, but an exchange of information. He goes, "That gentleman's using his talents in science to help us, right? We don't have to be an astronaut." Right? That's pretty extreme, pretty special calling. But what are you doing with your talents? Are you using your talents just to make money and not help others? Are you overcharging them for your services or deceptive? You utilize your talents. And at the time, I was a proprietary trader for a bank. I guess I'm helping the bank, and the bank that helps society, but it wasn't as direct. And that was really the day that I realized I wanted to get into retail financial products. And began to really think about how I was going to change my career and pivot my career. Still in indexing, right? I haven't left indexing since the day I got out of college, 23 years ago now. But I was able to think about transitioning to retail financial products, and I've had the blessing and ability to do that, and hence why I'm here today.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really, I'm so glad that you brought up the character and the integrity and the honesty part of all that, because, without people behind the scenes that have that level of character and integrity and that honesty, most society just, they just trust that what they're being told is 100% the truth. And sometimes things are being sold to us that, are not actually factually true. And it's a shame. And so it's good to hear from perspective of the firm, one of the firms that I work very closely with, which is your firm. That is a cornerstone, if you will, for how you guys operate and think, and I knew that intuitively because all the people that I've ever met with Annexus have been really solid people. I know Ron has a friend who's a client of mine whose name is Gary Finney, and Gary and Ron are friends, and Gary lives in Scottsdale, and I know that they played golf together and all that good stuff. And so I know Gary, and Gary is a high quality, high character individual, and wouldn't hang around with anything other than that. And so I'm pretty sure that I don't know Ron Church that well, of course. I've met him one time in a meeting in New York City, but obviously the staff that he has around him, he wants the best of the best. And that just doesn't mean in terms of return, he wants the best of the best people, the quality of people. And so I think when we're talking about legacy, right? So the legacy, as I see it from you, is the legacy is that you're able to, I guess, tell the listener, like, what is the legacy in your business that you feel like you're leaving? Let's say that you left tomorrow from Annexus, and you looked back on your whole career. What would it be that you would think that people would say about you, not only just personally but professionally, that you've been able to interact with and work with, and what kind of impact have you had on people financially in their personal financial lives? And even because a lot of what you guys do is retirement planning or estate planning type stuff. So how has that impacted what you've done? How has that had a direct impact on them? And what does that legacy feel like to know that you've given it your best to leave a good, strong legacy for people? What is that like?
Well, I would actually go back to what you highlighted, Annexus, right? So I've been with Annexus 8 years. We've been in the business 20 years. It's really the first product development company to, I would argue, legitimize the annuity chassis, the index annuity chassis. When Ron Schertz and his business partner created Annexus 20 years ago, it was a little bit of the Wild West in the index annuity market. And the vision was the chassis was so powerful, but if we could create the right infrastructure, a robust product, the ability to do it with well-respected insurers, and as well as with distribution partners. And you work with InsureMark, a Simplicity company, Jeremy, people that have the desire to learn as well as serve advisors, right, with fairness and competency, and then work with advisors to do so. That was why Annexus was created. Right. And with doing all that, again, not to sound holier than now, but to create a more valid framework to deliver and support retirees as having an alternative in their portfolio. Not that this was the silver bullet, the equity replacement. That would be deceptive. That this is a replacement within the portfolio. That was the vision in Annexus, and that's what has played out. Right here, $80 billion later, working with all these A+ rated companies. We just had our 10th anniversary with Nationwide. As for me, I joined Annexus 8 years ago. I would say part of the humility of realizing who you are as a person, me, is I'm a part of Annexus, right? And we are a team. We're an organization, the three rings. If you as a distributor of an advisor, right, you're part of that ring. Our product development insurance companies are, and then we part of that ring. So the legacy is that Annexus continues, right? That's what we bring. It's not about one person, right? Yes, I maybe implemented certain changes to the company and the business model. I helped take it to a next chapter of the company. I feel like I helped do that with our work in investment strategies in Wall Street. But ultimately, I'm just a piece of that. So there's really no concept for the listeners today about a legacy because I'm part of a company. I have a team. I'm built up my team. I've educated my colleagues. So that's really what the sustainability is. Otherwise, a concept of bye-bye, or God forbid something happened. We just lost a member of our team. He was with us 11 years ago. He's one of our executives, suffered from brain cancer for 34 days.
Oh my.
Tremendous loss, right? He was one of our most successful distributors, a legend in annuity distribution, and he's greatly missed, Mitch Waters. But that being said, he was able, he didn't know he was going to have this illness, but he actually had and built up his team with such rigor and care and passion as clients that I can say now, two and a half months later now since his passing, we miss Mitch, but his team is doing so well, right? Because it's about the legacy of having your company together. And I think that's really what's important for the listener here, as opposed to difference about my legacy for my family and children. Sure. Which are two different things.
Absolutely. So I love the way you said that. I mean, first of all, I love teams, right? Like I love building teams. I love getting talented people together and just letting them do their own thing. When it's amazing what can happen when you get a team of people that are truly professionals and are very have good hearts and good intentions. Even if I brought in some people in my own business that didn't know anything about the industry, but now they're the most talented people. I could not run this business without them. They are amazing, talented, caring, giving, loving people, man. And they just want to help people. And we know that we have something unique here at Hux Capital, and we know that. And we know that we do things differently than the rest of the industry. And so that gets us excited every day, like, hey, we can really help people in a way that's completely different. And we're so non-traditional in what we do and how we practice and all that. But there is a humility there. And I heard both. I heard the legacy is the team that Mitch was his name?
Yes.
That Mitch left. And then, but then I hear from you, and I think all the listeners can see and hear from you the humility that you have yourself from a professional standpoint. Like, hey, I don't run this whole thing. I got to have other people around me to help me. And I'm humble enough to say that. And I think that I don't want to say it's a rare trait, but oftentimes when you get around people that have money and they're intellectuals and so forth, there's an arrogance to them that they seem to lack humility. And maybe it's because they don't have good self-esteem or whatever it might be, but it doesn't come off as somebody who is a humble person. And I think that's a really important trait. So let's talk a little bit about the most important thing for you, which is obviously your family, right? Like every man that I know is a great man loves to talk about his family, his kids. And then it comes down to, I could never do this without my wife. I'm telling you right now, I had a divorce, and I can tell you that, the most important decision that you'll ever make in your life is the woman that you marry. And that's it. That is the bottom line. I mean, if there's one thing that you don't want to mess up, is making a decision on who the person is you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And I've found that person personally, and that person has literally just her presence and her being. She's a retired teacher. She has single-handedly turned my life around. Just
great.
The way that she allows me to interact with her, and she listens and she cares. She's not, a controversial person, whereas, I'm a little more, antagonizing it, I guess, if you will, with others. So she's my balance, but really, talk to the listeners, I guess, a little bit about, your family. And you got kids that one wants to be an entrepreneur and the other two are like, I know the 5-year-old's still kind of wrestling with mom at home. I get that. But the other two want to be athletes, or in what capacity, and kind of share that with us a little bit. And I would love to hear about your wife too.
Absolutely. So I have 4 boys. I would say I'm very blessed to have my wife, Aldona. We've been together for many years, been married since 2007, 4 boys that range in age from 5 to 13. So when you have a career in finance and you're working in insurance, meeting different insurance companies and teams in India, and Scottsdale is our headquarters, and you're on the road a lot, right? So you manage your weekends to be there for your family. You manage when you're home to be there in the evening, coming back from the city as best you can. But Aldona's been really the glue to help cultivate and grow these boys. And I've been so fortunate. I met Aldona in the city when I moved back from France.
Okay.
And our 4 sons, they're all different, right? And that's the other thing. You kind of going back to a team. And I see your baseball players up back behind you there. Every boy that I have in our house, they're going to act differently. They're going to have their own interest or passion. And I look at my oldest. He hears about the idea of entrepreneurialism. He's still trying to figure out what that is, and he's 7th grade. So for him, you're just trying to be straight A student, a Boy Scout, trying to be well-rounded through tackle PAL football to being involved in outdoors events. That's what we're really trying to support and let him explore his dreams. My middle 2, I would say, they're in an age, they're still younger, 9 and 11, where we're seeing one of the things was, I mentioned sports. Yes, they like sports and play. I think they have a realization that that's not like that has to be the end all be all. They understand how competitive it is. They're pretty smart that way. But sports have become such a business that I think they do get interested in the overall business of sports, because at their age, right, that's something that's really relevant to them, right? They're not necessarily in the markets. My oldest son, I'll talk to the markets with him. I'll get him on a call with the actuaries. If we're driving in the car and I have to take a call, I'll get my son on. My middle 2 are a little younger, but they love the idea of the business of sports. They're queuing in on the business of sports, which, by the way, has evolved so much, over the last 30, 40 years specifically. And then my youngest, that we joke, he's a little boss of the house in preschool. So it's a joy to have all of them, and definitely a gift.
Every dad, at least for myself, I hope my kids look back and say, my dad never quit. My dad taught me some some hard lessons. My oldest daughter went straight into the military out of high school. And I said, well, why did you do that? Why did you decide that? And she said, well, Dad, you told me that your biggest regret was that you never served our country. And I said, yeah. And she goes, so I'm going to make sure that your name is on a military uniform so that you can consider having served your country. Well, after I wiped a bucket of tears off my face, after thinking about how servant like that was, how humble that was. And I said, well, honey, I meant it more for men, not for women. You want your boys to go to war. You don't want your daughters to go to war, and I don't even know that I want my boys to go to war. Like, I think war is worthless, right? We've seen it time and time in history, how worthless war really is and unnecessary it is. But if we have to have a military, I thought, well, I meant it more for a boy, not for you, honey. And she's like, well, that's okay. And I said, so you're willing to die for this country? She goes, yes, sir, I am. I was like, okay, then I'll sign the papers to allow you to go into the Army. So she did and did all that. So that was cool. But I hope that she looks back and says, hey, my dad supported me in all my endeavors. And he just would hold me by the hand in everything that I did. And I still do to this day, in terms of teaching them, like, she's in the business kind of world, transitioning to that through Orange Theory Fitness. She's a manager. She wants to own a Orange Theory, and she's a trainer as well. And so she's very excited about the opportunity of doing that. And I'm like, hey, maybe we can work something out here, get you a franchise, but you need to learn the business really inside and out before you do that, before you go out and just buy a franchise. So I think for me and my two kids, and my stepkids, I mean, I'm really, really close with my stepkids. I feel like I have 4 children, honestly.
We do. Yes.
And I do. I really do. I mean, I've known them for 10 years. I mean, I knew them when they were 12 and 13 years old. So they're like mine. I feel like they're mine. And it's interesting to see them go on and know that, we don't really give them any leeway other than you get to pick and choose whatever you want to do and be in life, right? But there are certain things that will not be tolerated either. Like we're just not going to tolerate, nonsense. My kids, when they were younger, I told them one thing when they were going off to school at 6 and 7 years old. I said, what are we doing today, honey? Well, what do you mean I'm going to school? I go, no, what are we doing today? We're going to do the right thing today. No matter what happens, we're going to do the right thing. And then the next day I'd say the same thing. And so eventually I'd go, what are we going to do today, honey? I'm going to do the right thing, Dad. And I'm like, well, that little subtle message over 10 years from the time they were 6 to 16, it really drove a point home. I'm always going to do the right thing, no matter what. And so I hope that my legacy is that when my kids look back, my dad always not only told me to do the right thing, but he did do the right thing. He did the right thing by his clients. He did the right thing for his staff. He did the right thing for every person he came in contact with. I'm not batting 1,000. I'll never bat 1,000. Nobody ever will. But that's what I hope to share, eventually. And I hope that's what they say. So with regards to your family and your wife, what would your wife say? What would your kids say? Was he the most loving, giving, caring dad? Or would they say something else that, you would like for them to say?
Well, I would hope it's a lot of the same sentiment you just shared, Randy, making sure that they felt like they received lessons and understanding to be responsible, to be independent, to be ethical, to be supportive in their own families and their communities, and to continue that legacy. Going back to my analogy, not my analogy, but my point about Annexus, to continue the family, right? It's not a legacy of just thinking about wealth or materialism or some property. It's about really continuing the values of your family, the faith, and obviously you want to be open-minded in this day and age and letting them explore things that they're interested in, different careers we talked about, but knowing that the torch is being passed down from generation to generation. I'm not the last, right? And to making sure that we look back of the generations before us and after us, and we're preserving some of those values. And we're expanding that, right? As my wife's from Poland, a different culture, being from Europe, right? We're building and instilling those values, but they're still rooted in the same things that I was brought up on. And that's really what I hope for.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a big thing. I think, just touching people's lives, I think is so crucial. I mean, all people matter. They everybody counts and everybody is important. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I do respect the fact that they are a human being and that they deserve to be treated as such. And I hope that my kids see me do that. And I have a pretty big sense of humor, which I know we don't know each other that well, but I like to joke around, kid around a lot, and even in business and kind of a sarcastic sense of humor. And so sometimes it catches people off guard, but my kids, they know it. So when I say something sarcastic to somebody and we're doing something, they're like, "Oh my God, Dad, would you just stop?" Like it's, the dad jokes are over. So, but it's fun, and I agree with you that at the end of the day, we're passing the torch on to the next generation. And what is that torch? Is it fully lit? Did we do our best? Did we empty? My favorite quote is the one from Theodore Roosevelt. It's called "The Man in the Arena," how the man who's been in the dust and sweat and has spent every effort of his life striving valiantly, and he doesn't know either victory nor defeat, but he's in the battle. He's in the battle. He's fighting, and if he loses, at least he lost while daring greatly. And I think that's the thing is men and the industry and the people that we serve, being in the battle is a lot more fun than being on the sidelines and watching people battle. So what is your battle? So yeah, I think for me, I think that just teaching kids self-sufficiency like you're doing, like getting your kid on the your son on the phone with a actuary. I mean, could you get me on the phone with an actuary? I mean, I probably couldn't even understand them. So I
That's a
think
good
that's
one. And
yeah.
I know here, I know we're talking. You're the advisor for your clients here on the line today. One of the things about legacy, and not to try to put a sales pitch, is part of that is also a financial legacy, right? To making sure, here I'm 44 years old, I'm in good health, but you're saying, well, God forbid something happened. I think it's important to make sure that you can provide for your family. All those things that your schools be able to sign up for teams behind you. Nothing is free anymore, right? We just had a high level of inflation. And that's really where life insurance comes into play, right? And financial planning. So for those that you have your clients on the line that are maybe they feel like their children are raised, they're in the retirement years, you look around, they think about their family members that are still maybe in a period of time like myself, young children. How are they set up to provide legacy? Because that, by the way, that matters too. My great grandfather died of the Spanish flu in 1919. So that's over 100 years ago, right? I never met him, right? But what I do know is that my great grandmother had the ability to bury him and to get life insurance and had his house paid for. So here they weren't kicked on the street, right? It didn't. I'm not saying that he had enough money, my grandfather, to go to college, but they, the ability to provide that stability, which was so important, to help my grandfather grow up to the man he was and teach me the values that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think that is an absolutely great point, Tom. And you're so right in that it's true. It's not just about all the other tangible or intangible issues, characteristics that we have as human beings, but there is some sort of like if you feel like as a real dad, you want to be a provider and you really want to make sure that your kids are taken care of, whether you're there or not. And I think that's huge. And not just your kids, but your wife and anybody else that you want to care for. And I think that's a it's a huge responsibility that should be taken very seriously. And that's why I do what I do. I mean, you don't know the story, but I had to give up my dream. My dream was to coach college baseball. And I was doing that and I was coaching it, but I had to give it up because of poor financial management. And because of that poor financial management or advice, I guess I should say, because I had made plenty of money to be able to go and live that dream. And I was 43 when I went and did that. So at 62 years old now, I look back at all that and I'm like, man, I hate that I'm not coaching college baseball right now, but you know what? I've helped so many other people in so many other ways. And I've been able to afford my family the lifestyle that they deserve. And look, as a coach, why do things happen the way they do? I mean, as a coach, for the most part, most coaches don't make much money, even in college, unless you're at the highest level and you're the head coach, or maybe you're a first assistant or something like that. But the rest of them, they just make a very modest to really poor living. I mean, I think most of them are paid well below minimum wage because of the number of hours that they work.
Sure.
It's just crazy. So they do it because they love it. For the most part, they do it because they love it. So, when you think about, having to or having the luxury I was fortunate. I mean, being a degreed person in finance and accounting and being a CPA at Ernst & Young, like I was fortunate. I could step into this industry and I could pick it up pretty easily, right? And I saw what had been done to me, but I felt fortunate that I could pick it up and that I could figure out the industry in the way and do it the way that I felt like it should have been done for me. Because in 90% of the cases I see, it's not really done that way. You know, it's just not. It's not balanced. It's like throw all your eggs into one basket, throw it all into the market, and then just let the market take care of it. And when you look at the fact that what you do for people and the products that you create and us being able to provide those for our clients, that balancing effect right there is so important. You know, having the power of zero. We talked about this earlier before the call, but the power of zero in a portfolio is so important. And I didn't know that. I had no idea because I'm on a baseball field trying to live out my dream and become the next greatest head coach in college baseball. You know, so it's interesting because now I feel as though like I'm the head coach of all my clients and they're all my players. And I want to make sure that they're all positioned, they're in the right position to make the next play for themselves and for their family. And I hope that's what they feel. I hope they know that I really care, you know, because I do care a lot. And that's why I work with Annexus. I mean, because I care. You know, I could have said no. And there's other people that pay a lot more money than Annexus does. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but that might not be the best product out there for them. So I put the money aside and I looked at it from the standpoint of, hey, what's the best for our clients? And that's how we kind of do it. I'm sure you do the same.
Yeah, we're proud to have A+ rated carriers, and we appreciate your support. And that's part of the going back to the team, not to be cute here, but this idea of that team analogy.
Yes.
And at Annexus, we've worked over the 20 years to build a portfolio of products because we realize that one specific index annuity might not be the most appropriate for you.
That's right.
You might need guaranteed income. So we've been talking on, not to be morbid, but like unexpected death, right? But what about people that are living into their 90s, 100s, right? And they fear the risk of loss, of the loss of having markets fall apart or the longevity, and they're not able to enjoy their retirement or take care for their medical needs. So that's an appropriate product versus legacy planning. Right. And the one thing you also have to think about is taxes and getting the right product for that, or retirement readiness. If you're concerned about Social Security, if you're concerned about that getting cut, you're concerned about maybe not be able to keep daily living tasks and needing some sort of care, but you don't have long-term care. So we really build the portfolio to say, well, this isn't the specific index. And then for me, again, I'm speaking to you just about a half a mile from New York, from Wall Street here. I'm in New York City today. I'm not here with one cleanup hitter, right? We're building a team of indices, and each index has its own strategies as well by building that team. And I think about when you were coaching, if you had a player that was slumping a little bit with right-handed hitters, would you kick him off the team, but you knew he was a really great hitting off left-handed pitchers, right? You might play him a little less, I get that, but then the day comes, you got that left-handed pitcher, and you know he's your best on the team, right? And that really comes to a portfolio. And instead of the left-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher, that might be value stacks. That might be U.S. growth. That might be international stocks, right? So that pitcher is going to come from different markets, but how do we have a team that can hit singles and doubles, not home runs always, but singles and doubles, so ultimately we can get a few runs on the scoreboard throughout the game and win the game. Not that we're going to win the inning, but winning the game.
Yeah, not just the first inning or two. It's winning the full 9 innings, right? It's so funny that's a great analogy, but I bring that up to clients all the time. I go, look, you know, if I was a coach and I had a left fielder and a second baseman, I wouldn't put my left fielder at second base and my second baseman in left field because it's not their strength. This product that you own, this investment strategy that you have, this retirement plan that you've been shown or have not been shown, it's not going to work for you. And I'm going to share with you why. You got to get the right players in the right position because you got to be able to make the plays. You got to be able to defend yourself against losses, and you have to be able to take advantage of the gains when you can. But you have to have proactive management. You have to have somebody who is passionate about it, somebody who cares. You have to have somebody who's holistic in nature. I'm not just looking at one or two things. I'm looking at long-term care. I'm looking at estate planning. What are you going to do for legacy? We have clients that pass away. When our clients pass away, you know, the spouse always comes in And it's a very sad deal, man, because I have such a personal, close relationship with my clients. It's always a sad thing, but I look back at it with pride. Like, I honored what this person wanted. He asked for this, she asked for that, and I gave that to them. And here they are. They're gone. And now they're able to do what they want to do with that money. And that's very satisfying to me. That makes me feel like I got a win, and it's not about me getting the win. It's about their family getting the win. But the fact that I was capable and had the knowledge and had worked hard enough in my life to be able to figure out, like, where do I get the wins from? Where can I help somebody? Where can I get the right players, and right products, right strategies? So I think it's a great strategy, great analogy, Tom. And man, being a baseball guy, of course, I appreciate that. But yeah, you're right. You want to put the righty in on the lefty when you can. You just don't get rid of them. And so there's a situation for everybody. And so what we try to do is really make sure that everybody involved, in the retirement planning process. I like for my clients to say and tell me what they like and what they think will work for them. And then we'll run all the different designs for them. And then they pick something. We pick it together. We do it in a very team-like fashion because it's their money. It's not my money. They just don't know how to do the planning. They don't know how to do the investing, and they're counting on me for that. And so that's a lot of fun. It is a form of being a coach. It's not quite the same as being in a locker room with 25, young, smelly men. But nonetheless, it is a lot of fun to get a 50, 60-year-old person and to be able to help walk them through this stage of their life, which is really, it's for them. I think most people are, yes, they say they want to retire, but when they get there, it's a really kind of a scary thing because that income's not coming in anymore, or not like it used to be. And they're wondering, like, how does this work? And they make all kind of mistakes, and they listen to their neighbors. They listen to their coworkers. They listen to people that are non-professionals. And all these guys say all these things that are negative about different aspects of retirement planning. Annuities, by all means, I mean, they get the worst rap of all, and it shouldn't be. I mean, when you look at the truth about annuities, and I only do the fixed index annuities, but when you look at the truth about annuities, there's no more powerful product than a fixed index annuity. I mean, I've got full protection. Sometimes I have no fee. I mean, if I want guaranteed income, I pay a little fee, but I got guaranteed income the rest of my life and my spouse's life. Like, what's more comforting as a man, as a provider? And this gets back to what you were saying about leaving a legacy, a financial legacy. I would feel terrible if I died and my wife didn't have any income, or I didn't leave her anything because I was just worried about my life. Like, that's not how you do it. It's just not. So
no, chasing, and those that are wanting to day trade and chase stock return, that you can do that in your liquid portfolio. That's your fund money. You still probably should have equities that are more stable. And then, as we said, this is the defensive play that really can provide alternative. Again, not to be cute on the baseball analogies. I hope you think of Annexus really as your farm system for your Gold Glove players. They're not going to drop any balls. They're going to have some hits, decent averages over the long haul, but they're not going to be a home run hitter. And those type of players tend to have a long career, right? Yeah. And I think about the versatility of what they can bring. That's our aim in the portfolio. But you still have to have your home run hitter to hit those big equity returns to complement what we can bring on the field.
Man, I tell you what, you just loaded me up with some great analogies I'm going to share with my clients now. I'm going to be, especially my baseball clients,
When I was a little kid, I got in love with baseball cards.
Yes.
And understanding the statistics of baseball cards in the back, understanding the values of the market. It was a saturated market at the time, but it was able to teach me so much. And there's a lot of similarities to the card market. And then when you study the history of the card market, let's say going back 120 years, it's like the similarities understanding the stock market. Yes. The Honus Wagner 1910 card, I am as interested about what JP Morgan did to stop the 1908 panic. Great history. Is it, and not that that's going to repeat itself, right? But there's a rhyme to it.
Sure.
I don't think Honus Wagner is going to be the last person that says, take my card out of the set, right? And JP Morgan's not going to be the last. There was, when you look at 09, the other type of titans of the street at the time, Buffett and the leaders from some of the banks to really recapitalize Wall Street. But to understand how it played out, there's always a rhyme to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. Those are really good things to think about too. So we're kind of wrapping up here. So why don't you kind of leave the listeners with, what do you think is the most valuable legacy lesson or thing that you could leave with our listeners today? What is the one piece of advice, if you will, about leaving a legacy that you think would benefit everybody?
That's a deep question.
It's a tough one.
Obviously, your faith and family legacy that we've talked about, right? That's so
Yes.
important. But getting, tying that back in is really also making sure that you yourself are providing that legacy, as we talked about, and then that you're having that conversation. I remember you asked me about my father, but my father, because we're so private to him.
Yes.
And he always thought, like, I don't want to talk about that. I was an only child. And I've noticed a lot of people get very nervous about talking about finance. And I get estates happen. There can be a lot of fighting and wills and things, but really be open about that. I think when you talk about health, we're getting better as a society, talking about your own health and going for tests. Which is important. When your children and when your family members get old enough, talking about the finances, and then for you to share that with them so they're not worried about you, maybe some planning considerations, then also challenge them to make sure they have a plan, right?
Sure.
They might not have the means at this point to work with Randy, but maybe they're on a trajectory. Maybe they need a little bit of advice. That's what I would instill. Having financial faith wellness, family wellness, health wellness, but financial wellness. And sometimes we unfortunately overlook it. And you can even be very smart and have a lot of means, but are you managing that to the best of your ability?
And I think that's well said. And that is absolute perfect way to end the thing. I appreciate you being here, man. You're definitely an impressive man and impressive businessman. I just really appreciate you taking the time to share, some of your deep thoughts with people out there and also your business thoughts. I think it's important that people understand that. And if you want to know more about Tom Haines and what he does, just reach out to me and I'll be glad to share with you whatever, I can. But he's just a very, very humble, very smart guy. You guys can tell that are listening to me. We really appreciate you being on here, Tom. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed getting to know you. Shoot, man, every time I do these podcasts, I'm like, man, I wish I could hang out with that guy.
Well, I'm happy to get back on. And yes, I thank you, Randy, for inviting me on, and to all your clients that have taken the time to listen to us today. Thank you. And best of luck to them. So we appreciate your support and belief and moral compass to understand what we're trying to accomplish here and trying to help your clients through retirement.
Well, we couldn't do it without you, man. We couldn't do it without Annexus. I promise you that. So we really appreciate you, Tom. Thanks so much for joining us. And I'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Absolutely.
At Hux Capital Management, we work hard to protect your wealth with proactive management and asset lock. Set your risk level, monitor your portfolio automatically, and help secure your future. Contact us today.